I never thought betrayal could cut so deep until the day my own granddaughter stole from me. It wasn't just money. It was trust. It was love. It was every sacrifice I had made for her since the day she was born, wiped away in an instant. I had spent my life working hard, saving every extra penny I could. I wasn't wealthy, but I had enough to live comfortably in my old age. My late husband and I had dreamed of traveling, of enjoying our retirement without worrying about bills or debts. But after he passed, I found solace in my family, especially in my granddaughter, Lisa. Lisa was my pride and joy. She had lived with me for a few years when she was younger, while her parents went through a rough patch. I had taken care of her like she was my own. I rocked her to sleep when she had nightmares, packed her lunches for school, and saved every crayon drawing she ever made me. I loved her unconditionally, but she didn't love me the same way. At 24, Lisa married a man named Kyle, and I should have seen the red flags from the start. He was flashy, arrogant, always talking about money and status. Lisa, once a sweet girl with big dreams, became obsessed with keeping up with his world. The expensive clothes, the designer handbags, the luxury vacations, it was never enough. One day, she came to me with tears in her eyes. "Grandma, please." She begged, gripping my hands. "Kyle and I are in a tough spot. He needs a new car for work, and we just can't afford it right now. He's been looking at this Mercedes. Nothing crazy, just something reliable. I was wondering, could you help us? Just a loan, I swear." I hesitated. My savings weren't meant for extravagant purchases. They were my safety net, my lifeline. But Lisa looked at me with those big, pleading eyes, and I caved. I had no idea that just a loan meant my entire life savings. I had trusted her. I had given her access to my bank account under the guise of convenience, thinking she would take only what she needed. But a few days later, I went to withdraw money and was met with an empty balance. Every single dollar was gone. Gone. I sat in that cold bank office, staring at the teller in shock. "There must be a mistake," I whispered. "I had over $60,000 in that account." The teller frowned, clicking away at her keyboard. "Ma'am, the money was transferred last week. Do you recognize this name?" "Lisa Donovan." "My granddaughter." I felt my heart shatter. I drove straight to Lisa's house, my hands shaking on the wheel. When I arrived, I saw it sitting in the driveway, a brand new, gleaming black Mercedes. My stomach turned. I knocked on the door, and when she opened it, she had the audacity to smile. "Grandma! What a surprise!" I couldn't even speak. My voice cracked as I whispered, "Lisa, you took all of it?" Her expression faltered just for a moment before she rolled her eyes and waved me inside. "Oh, come on, Grandma. Don't be dramatic." "Don't be dramatic?" My voice rose. "You stole from me." She crossed her arms, shifting uncomfortably. "I didn't steal. You gave me access to the account. I just took what we needed. Kyle's job depends on appearances, you know. He can't show up in some old beater car." I felt sick. My granddaughter, the little girl I once tucked into bed at night, had drained my life savings for a car. I clenched my fists. "Lisa, I need that money. That was everything I had." She waved a dismissive hand. "Grandma, relax. Kyle's business is going to take off soon and we'll pay you back. Just give us a little time." But she never paid me back. In fact, over the next few months, she avoided me, stopped answering my calls, stopped coming to visit. When I finally showed up at her house again, Kyle answered the door, smirking like I was some nuisance. "She's not home," he said. I could hear her inside, laughing at something on the TV. I tried again, and again. Each time I was brushed off, ignored, treated like I was nothing. Lisa had taken everything from me, and she didn't even feel guilty. That was the day I vowed to never let her hurt me again. And though she didn't know it yet, she had made the biggest mistake of her life. Because one day, I would make her regret it. And 10 years later, I finally got my revenge. Time passed, but the pain of Lisa's betrayal never left me. At first, I kept hoping she would come to her senses. That one day, she would show up on my doorstep, tears in her eyes, full of regret, ready to make things right. But she never did. Instead, she lived her life as if I didn't exist. Kyle's business never did take off. In fact, within 2 years, it crumbled. They lost their fancy apartment and had to move into a smaller house. Nothing extravagant, but still far beyond their means. Lisa reached out once, a half-hearted text asking if I could lend her some money to help them get through a rough patch. I didn't even respond. I had learned my lesson. With my savings gone, I had to find a way to survive. I picked up part-time work as a cashier at a local grocery store, not out of choice, but necessity. Standing on my feet all day at my age was exhausting, but it was the only way I could afford rent and groceries. And the worst part? Lisa knew. She knew I was struggling. She knew I had to work because of what she did, and she still never apologized. I was nothing to her. I let go of any hope I had left, and then something unexpected happened. One day, I received a letter in the mail from a lawyer's office. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I had no business with any lawyers, and I certainly didn't have money for legal trouble. But when I opened the envelope, my hands began to shake. It was from an investment firm I had completely forgotten about. Years ago, back when my husband was alive, we had put a small sum of money into an investment account. It was a just-in-case fund, and after he passed, I had left it untouched, never expecting much to come of it. But apparently, over the years, the market had been kind. Very kind. The letter stated that due to compounding interest and market growth, my once small investment had grown into something substantial. Very substantial. Over $3 million. I sat in my tiny apartment, staring at the number, unable to breathe. $3 million. For so long, I had struggled. I had pinched pennies, taken extra shifts at work, gone without the little comforts I used to enjoy, all while Lisa lived her lavish life off my stolen money. And now I had more money than she ever did. It felt like fate. I could finally retire, finally stop worrying about whether I could afford rent or groceries, finally live the life I deserved. But as I sat there, letting the reality sink in, another thought crept into my mind. Lisa. I knew the moment she found out about my newfound fortune, she would come crawling back. She would show up at my door with those same fake tears, that same desperate voice, begging for help. But this time, things would be different, because I was no longer the same woman she had stolen from. I was stronger, wiser, and I was going to make damn sure she never saw a single penny of my money. For years, I carried the weight of Lisa's betrayal in silence. The pain of losing my savings had long since hardened into a quiet resolve. I would never forget, and I would never forgive. But as time passed, I played my part well. I remained the struggling grandmother in Lisa's eyes, careful not to show any sign of change. She barely called, barely checked in. That is, until she found out the truth. And when she did, her reaction was exactly what I expected. It happened at a family gathering, one of the few times a year that Lisa made an effort to be around. My son, David, had invited everyone over for his birthday. I had debated skipping it, but in the end, I went. Lisa, as usual, arrived in her designer outfit, wearing the expensive jewelry her husband had bought, likely with my stolen money. She barely acknowledged me, too busy showing off her latest luxury handbag to my other grandkids. I might have let the evening pass without issue, if it weren't for Diane. Diane was Lisa's childhood best friend and someone I had never particularly trusted. She talked too much, always inserting herself into conversations that weren't hers. But on this night, she became my greatest asset. I had been speaking with David's wife when Diane's shrill voice rang out across the room. "Mary, I didn't know you were looking to move." The conversation stopped. I turned to see Diane smiling at me, oblivious to the sudden tension in the air. Lisa's head snapped up. "Wait, what?" I forced an innocent smile. "Oh, it's nothing. Just considering some options." Diane, of course, wasn't done. "But you were looking at luxury places, weren't you? Retirement estates?" "I didn't even know you had that kind of money." Lisa's entire face stiffened. The room was silent. David looked confused. "Mom?" he asked gently. I took a slow sip of my tea, letting the suspense linger before I finally answered. "Well," I said, setting my cup down, "I suppose now's as good a time as any to share the news." I folded my hands in my lap and met Lisa's gaze directly. "I came into some money recently." Lisa's eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" I tilted my head, Leslie. "It means, Lisa, that I'm not struggling the way you might think." I saw at the moment it clicked for her. Her expression flickered from confusion to realization, to something darker. She knew, and she was furious. "How much money are we talking about?" Lisa asked, trying and failing to sound casual. I took my time before answering. $3 million. Gasps rang out across the room. Lisa nearly choked. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice rising. $3 million, more than enough to change my life. And after all these years, more than enough to remind Lisa of what she had stolen from me. I could see the thoughts racing behind her eyes. She was calculating, trying to piece together how I had gotten that kind of money. "Grandma," she said, suddenly softening her voice, playing the role of a concerned granddaughter. "Why didn't you tell me?" I smiled. "Oh, Lisa, we both know why." She had nothing to say to that. She knew she had burned the bridge. She knew there was no coming back from what she had done. But the best part? Lisa didn't know what was coming next. Because while she might have stolen from me once, she was about to realize that she would never see a single dime of my fortune. $3 million, a life-changing amount, and she wasn't getting a single cent. She had spent years living under the assumption that I was just a struggling old woman, forced to scrape by because of her selfish actions. Now, she had to come to terms with a brutal truth. She had stolen from me when she thought I had nothing. But in the end, I was the one who had won. She tried to recover quickly, forcing a shaky smile. "Grandma, I don't understand why you never told me. We could have celebrated together." I nearly laughed at how desperate she sounded. Before I could respond, David, my son, cleared his throat. His expression was cautious, unreadable. "Mom, what do you mean you came into money?" I met his gaze, calm and steady. "I made some investments, smart ones." It was true, of course, but it wasn't the full story. Years ago, when my husband was alive, we had put away a small amount into an investment account. I had forgotten about it for years, leaving it untouched. And over time, thanks to market growth and compounding interest, that small amount had transformed into something remarkable. $3 million. For years, I had struggled, taking extra shifts, stretching every penny, while Lisa and her husband had lived lavishly with the money she stole from me. And now, I had more wealth than she ever did. Lisa let out a small, forced laugh. "Well, this is amazing news. Grandma, we should talk. Maybe we can..." I held up a hand, cutting her off. "There's nothing to talk about." She blinked. "What?" I took a slow sip of my tea before setting the cup down. Then, in the calmest voice I could manage, I said, "Lisa, you're not in my will." Silence. For the first time in her life, she had nothing to say. I could see the moment she fully processed my words. Her breathing quickened, her hands clenched into fists on the table. "Grandma, you're joking, right?" I tilted my head. "Does it look like I'm joking?" The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Then finally, she whispered, "You wouldn't do that to me." I let out a humorless laugh. "Wouldn't I?" She sucked in a sharp breath, panic flashing in her eyes. "Grandma, please. I made a mistake. I was young and stupid. I didn't realize what I was doing. But we're family." I leaned forward. "Funny, Lisa. That's exactly what I told you when you took every last penny I had." She shook her head violently, as if she could erase the past. "But I was desperate. Kyle and I." I held up a hand again, and she fell silent. "No excuses," I said, my voice firm. "No justifications. You knew what you were doing. And the worst part? You never apologized. Not once." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I had no sympathy left to give. For years I had wondered what I would do if this moment ever came. Would I forgive her? Would I give her a second chance? But looking at her now, watching her squirm, I realized something. I felt nothing for her. Not love, not hate, just nothing. Lisa's voice turned desperate. "Grandma, I'm sorry. I mean it. Please don't do this." I stood up. "We're done here." Her face twisted in horror. "No, please, Grandma." I turned to David. "I'll be going now. Thank you for dinner." David, bless him, nodded firmly. "I'll walk you out, Mom." Lisa shot up from her chair. "Wait." She reached for me, but I stepped back. "Goodbye, Lisa." Then I walked out of my son's house, feeling lighter than I had in years. For the first time in a long time, I was free. Lisa had taken everything from me once, but I had taken something from her too, the one thing she wanted most, and I never looked back.